Hi everybody, welcome back to Capricorn Radio TV. This is your host James and I'm super excited about today's show. We've got Mr. David Icke with us on the call today and we're going to be talking about his latest book, Phantom Self and How to Find the Real One. An absolutely awesome book. Can't wait to get into this. A little bit about the book before I bring David on. He is waiting on the call. Phantom Self takes the story still deeper into the shadows to reveal the scale and magnitude of what is unfolding as people go about their daily lives. Who or what is dictating the nature of these daily lives? Who and what is driving global society down a dark road of 24/7 control, surveillance and tyranny, and why? You can find out all about David on davidicke.com and his forthcoming tour, which I believe he's already had one event. So let's not wait any longer. David, first of all, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Great to see you. Dave, you've had a venue already. You've had one speaking event?
Yeah, it started on the Isle of Wight, about 4 miles from where I'm sitting, on Saturday. And then I go to London in 2 weeks' time to Brixton Academy, and then all around the world, and Ireland very early in the new year.
Oh, beautiful.
And the reaction on Saturday was fantastic. I mean, to our little island came people from all parts of the world, including places like Iran. So it's so encouraging after all those barren years of walking a lonely road and banging your head against a wall thinking nothing's ever going to change, but you're going to keep trying anyway, that suddenly the waters are breaking. It's fantastic.
Sure. Actually, I'm getting into London on June 18th, but I'm going to miss that date, but I probably will see you in Italy. I think I'm going to grab the Italy event.
Oh, in Rimini, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And before I get into the book, David, I know you've had a really long, arduous road, and you were a lone voice before it became fashionable to talk about conspiracies. But I mean, we won't go too mad on the bio because I know you've done this a lot. But I mean, it was a major thing for you to go through the ridicule, because that really did instill in you, I don't know, determination to see through. It took off the any sort of illusion of any kind of any kind of thrill of anything. This was going to be a hard job straight from the word go. I mean,
the biggest thing it gave me, James, was it eliminated concern about what other people thought of me. See, we are multi-dimensional beings, multi-dimensional consciousness, and the amount that the conscious mind, this is even mainstream science, the amount that the conscious mind is aware of is, compared with the subconscious mind, is absolutely laughable. And so the conscious mind is, I could put it like this: the conscious mind is like going down a bending river on a canoe, and the subconscious mind is looking at that scene from Google Maps, right? So what you think is a terrible thing, it's like I have this phrase, life tends to give you your greatest gifts brilliantly disguised as your worst nightmare. What looks to us like a nightmare in a really bad situation, to the deeper levels of yourself, not some guy in a spaceship, of deeper levels of yourself, that experience takes on a completely different context. It's an essential experience for something that's coming down the river symbolically, but you don't know what's down the river, but the subconscious does, and the more expanded level of your awareness does. So while that mass ridicule for me was, shall we say, challenging in the experiencing of it, what it deleted was the fear of what other people thought of me. Now, a few of those turns in the river down the road, I'm coming up with information that, to say the least, is far out from the perspective of what we call, and we only call it this, normal perception of the world. And had I not been through that deletion of this fear that enslaves so many people, in fact almost everyone to some extent, the fear of what other people think, that was deleted from me. And therefore, when this apparently, on the face of it, strange information started coming into my life and I started to compile it and put it together, there was no point, because of that experience, that I went through a process of self-censorship, of, well, what do I leave out so they don't think I'm crazy? I don't care if people think I'm crazy. What I care about is whether I'm closing in on the truth or not.
Wow.
That's my only criteria. So I don't have this self-censorship mental gymnastics that I go through. And I have to thank a nightmare experience for that.
Yeah. Wow. David, I just want to say a big shout out to Valeria for sending me a copy of Human Race Get Off Your Knees. And in reading that and reading The Phantom Self, David, I just, you know what I like about this book is there's a lot of new, really cutting edge information in it, very scientific. It's like stripping the bullshit away and just saying, look, this is, you know, science is so ignorant, David, that and it's, I mean, it's all sitting there for everybody to go out and read, and the scientific doctrine if they want. And I love the core stuff in this, and there's a lot of positivity in that, I think, this book, David. Not that there's, you know, I think it's not right to say negativity either, because you need to get through some negative reality of situation to understand it, to know where you're going to go with it. I mean, if it's negative, it's negative. You can't tiptoe around it.
The point is that I would say, because what you're introducing here is what I've heard so many times over the years, particularly from people of what you might call the New Age type arena, which is you mustn't frighten people by saying what you're saying about what's going on in the world. Well, first of all, they often the same people are going around telling others you must let go of fear. So, I mean, where does that fit into this little story? But it's ever so simple. If you do not know what is going on in the shadows, behind the scenes, then how are you going to do anything about what you don't know is going on? What this mentality doesn't see is that understanding what is happening, and not least the techniques of mass manipulation to get us to react in the way that's desirable, is absolutely the fundamental bottom line foundation, starting point of doing something about it. And then once we've got a grasp on what's happening, or some of it, and we've got a grasp on the mass mind and manipulation, emotional manipulation techniques, then we can look at why a few can control and direct the lives and the society of the many, the rest of them, and why they can do it without needing to physically force everyone to do it. That then leads us into how it's all done, and that is by the manipulation of perception. And what I do in Phantom Self, and what I'm going to do in these World Tour events, I did it on Saturday, and I saw the reaction from the audience when I was doing it, was simply to go through the sequence that everyone goes through from being born to going out and on into the adult world, and to just highlight the means through which people believe what they believe. It's what I call in these events the postage stamp consensus. It's a little area of what is perceived, because everyone has been through this process, through influenced by the parents who've been through this process, so they pass it on to their children, then into school at a ludicrously early age. And an authority figure from then on, and figures, is telling you what is right and wrong, possible and impossible, what is and isn't, when you can speak, when you turn up, when you can leave, all this stuff. I mean, schools, for me, are just prisons for children, but programming prisons for children. And then you go off into higher education, and you then actually get into great debt now to pay for the higher level programming. And then you go out into the world, and as you do, and you go into the institutions of politics and business and banking and science and medicine and all these things that actually are the bastions of from which people get their perceptions of reality, everyone who goes out into those professions and others from this core programming we call education takes that core perception of normal out in those professions. And then, of course, in the adult world, these professions and institutions are then confirming to each other that this normal is indeed normal. But as you rightly mentioned a few minutes ago, once you actually just step off the postage stamp consensus, and of course, we're back now to the ridicule, because there's two ways that this postage stamp consensus dictates the human version of normal, en masse. One is the download from cradle to grave of what is normal, operating in this tiny, tiny range of possibility. And the other one is people who may be questioning it. They still stand on the postage stamp because they don't want the consequences of challenging it or stepping off. What will my mother say? What will the blokes at work say? What will these people say? That person say? And so this goes on. And so people who want to make a difference in the world and want to challenge this whole perception deception, they have to step off the postage stamp and take what comes with that. But you, as you mentioned earlier, when you do that, when you're prepared to go and research into areas that are not on the postage stamp, you find the evidence for the fact that postage stamp normal is a provable nonsense and extraordinarily limited. I mean, you're drowning in the evidence and the information once you start, putting it together. And this is one of the things, that is happening now that I'm seeing. Because what I'm seeing now is not just the numbers that come to the events. I'm seeing the kind of people. I'm seeing more and more people out of the system that are coming there and saying, well, I'm going to have a look at this.
Yeah.
And it's because once you can get some information out there to people outside of the mainstream, suddenly, especially in league with witnessing current events unfolding every day, it has this validity to people. It starts to answer mysteries and things that have bewildered them. Why does this happen like that? Why are they doing that? Why does this happen? And once you see it put together based on where society is being taken, how and why, suddenly these events which seem random and what are they doing that for, take on serious logical clarity, and it's very powerful.
I'll admit this, I'm ashamed in one respect. Okay, I was playing the game, but I went through the education system, David, and I was in an engineering largely role, and I tried to get out of that into science, and I went through that, and I won't put letters out to my name, I don't care about that, but I was playing the game, I wanted a good job, I did all that, but I left, David, and I left because, bizarrely, I grew up with a very awake father, and he's a hypnotist and a healer, but he's an engineer, and he's a unique guy, and so I was always aware of conspiracies growing up and all sorts of stuff, and however, it was the renewable energies market that I was working in, and I seen the climate change fiasco bullshit, and I seen the carbon tax program being implemented especially in Britain. They pumped money into the BBC to get everybody worked up about the planet and renewable energies, and then we need to put a carbon tax on that, and it was that made me want to leave, and I didn't want to be a part of it anymore. Started up a little radio show, and I went in a different direction, and I'm glad I did, and that was a tough road for me, but
I was talking to someone today actually who had a little alternative healing show on a little village hall in the Isle of Wight, and they were talking about, well, we want to get this on the NHS and all that stuff, and I was saying, the system doesn't want it. The system wants to destroy it. So instead of trying to have what you're doing absorbed by the system, operate outside of the system, so people come to you outside of the system. And when I started out 26 years ago, there was no alternative media. It didn't exist. And so what you had to do was get out there and create your own sources of communication. I got on a plane and went around America for three months, talked to nobody. I talked to less than 8 people. It was 8 people just outside Chicago. It was unbelievable. I mean, and you think, well, it would have been cheaper to ring them. But it starts something, and then people talk to someone. The next time you go back, there's more. The next time you go back, there's more. And now we have the internet, doing the kind of things that you're doing and people like you are doing. It gives a source for this information to be communicated outside of the mainstream, because eventually so many people are going to be aware of this. So many people are going to be talking about it. The mainstream is going to have to, kicking and screaming, allow some of it in, although they'll try to trash it. I was on a BBC program the other night called This Week, Current Affairs program. First time I've ever been invited on a mainstream current affairs program. So that these things will start to happen. But the mass of the communication of this information has to operate outside of the system, which takes its point of observation for everything, not least the media, of the postage stamp consensus of what is perceived to be normal. And as you will well know, that sense of normal, collective agreement of normal, is dependent on one very basic ingredient, and that is ignorance.
Ignorance, yeah.
Because as you pointed out, there's the information to expose the consensus of normal as ludicrous is all there. So the system has to keep people in ignorance that it's there, so they will still believe in the consensus of normal. And what people like you and me doing, and increasing numbers now, is breaking that stranglehold, a monopoly on the circulation of information that the mainstream has had for so long.
I think one of the things that attracted me to physics, though, David, in fairness, was the bizarreness and the weirdness and the philosophical nature of quantum physics. And I know you go into that a lot in the book, right. and I think it's essential because scientific doctrines are just trying to ignore this. They want it to go away. They hate it because it explains.
They do.
They do.
They hate it. It frightens them to death. This is the funny thing. I mean, you've been in science. You'll know this 100%. What I love, it makes me smile, is you've got quantum physics, which is showing that reality is malleable and reality is not what we experience it as.
Provable.
Yes, and then you've got all these other scientific disciplines that now, kicking and screaming again, have to acknowledge the existence of quantum physics, but having done it, they all crack on in their own discipline as if that doesn't exist.
Ignorance again.
It was encapsulated by a review I read of a book by Professor Richard Dawkins, the Oxford University professor who for whom anything alternative is garlic to a vampire, really. And he in this review, it was pointed out that he said in the book that reality is not malleable, but in another part of the book that his knowledge of quantum physics was a bit foggy, which is a kind of staggering contradiction. And this is so important, not just in understanding how we manipulate it, because that in the shadows that is manipulating behind what we see, understand the nature of reality and how we interact with it, and they're manipulating us and our perceptions by using that knowledge. But it's also vital for the way we live our lives in general. I mean, this is the crazy thing. Because of the postage stamp consensus, politics, business, banking, science, journalism, medicine are all based both in their observations and in their operations and laws and medical techniques on the fact that the world is solid and physical when it's not. And so when you see the whole foundation on which everything happens and all these judgments and happenings are made and dictated from the most fundamental misunderstanding of reality itself, it's no surprise the world is as it is compared with what it could be. I mean, even down to healing. If you take the body to be physical, you do what mainstream medicine does. It treats the physical, but the physical is an expression of an energetic field and fields in the unseen, beyond the tiny frequency that we can decode into a visual reality. And that is the projector. That information source and what happens there is the projector. Again, it's part, in a way, of the subconscious. the body is the movie on the screen. This is projecting the movie. So if you try to change the movie on the screen, it's never going to change. You've got to change what it's being projected from. So what you have is a whole mainstream big pharmaceutical medical industry that's based on trying to change the movie by manipulating the screen. It's not going to happen. And this is why the great cry from the alternative, much of which targets the energetic field rather than what is a holographic projection, I would say, is that mainstream medicine only treats the symptom. It doesn't treat the cause. The reason for that is the symptom is manifesting in the person's experience and the doctor's experience in the physical body, the hologram.
My name's Maria Wheatley and I'm a second generation dowser, author and researcher, and recently I founded esotericcollege.com, which is fully affiliated to the Association of British Correspondence Colleges. We're offering courses in dowsing, past life regression, tarot and Druidic soul star astrology, and you can study these at beginner's level, intermediate, or take them to advanced level to be a professional. You can study these with online courses mixed with Skype lessons, or take a full Skype course. You could even take extra Skype tuition because I'm your personal tutor. You can find out more about me at mariawheatley.com, or you can find out more about the college at esotericcollege.com.
But it's an error, a distortion in the energetic field that's causing that. Now, mainstream medicine does not even accept the existence of this energetic field. Thus, how can it possibly ever treat the cause when it can only see the symptom in the projection? And Tesla said, who gave us basically our electrical systems, was way ahead of his time, Nikola Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
He said if science would just start looking at basically the non-physical, looking at vibration and frequency and energy and the unseen, it would move vast distances in a short time in its understanding of everything. And the reason the National Health Service and things like that are overwhelmed, well, one of the major reasons they're overwhelmed, is so many people are ill. And because so many people are ill, because what people eat, drink, how they are subjected constantly now to fantastic increases in radiation. What is radiation? It's electromagnetic energy. What is the one level of the field of the body? It's electromagnetic fields. One is distorting the other. That's how radiation causes cancer. So the answers to all these problems lie in a complete reevaluation of reality and how it works, and then these unsolvable problems, whether they're health or whatever they are, have answers in front of you. But if we go on believing the world is as the postage stamp tells us it is, those problems are unsolvable, because you can't solve a problem when the solution lies in something you deny even exists, which is what the mainstream does.
I think what I like about reading the book is that it reiterates my position. I can say I'm awake for a long time now, but I have levels of being awake. I think I'm awake, and then I realize another layer of manipulation that's out there, and it's like that. It's like layers and layers of manipulation and deceit, and it's a nasty environment we have to navigate in. It is, let's be face it, but I'm proud to be awake. I'm happy to be awake. I would rather be awake than be asleep. I'd rather know than not know. Just for a moment, to explain what the phantom self is versus the infinite self, and the difference between the two, or the comparison.
Well, this is the biggest thing of all for me, because of the manipulation, the perception, deception. Most people, the vast majority of people, self-identify with their body, their name, their income bracket, their race, their nationality, their religion, their life story. But our true state, our eternal state, is awareness, the state of being aware. The question is, how aware? what I'm saying is that there is one infinite seamless awareness, which I'll use the term infinite awareness for. And we are all points of attention within it. So my point of attention at the moment, my infinite awareness, is having a point of attention called David Icke in this body, in this country, in this place, and with this life story. But I don't self-identify with David Icke being me. I associate David Icke being a label for my current experience. I self-identify with being infinite awareness, having that experience. And what it does, that reevaluation of self-identity, I can sort of my own experience, is it's Einstein said, it's pretty simple. He said, and it's not philosophy, it's physics. If you tune to the frequency of something you want, then you can't help but have it. You can't help but be it, because the frequency is, if the frequency of what you want is this, if you tune with it, then this manifests. That's how it works. And what the conspiracy is about, and its foundation of everything, is manipulating our perceptions of not just reality, but of self, crucially, so that we see ourselves in the most limited form. And so if you self-identify with what I call phantom self, name, background, race, color, etc., then that perception carries a frequency. And that frequency band of that perception, little me, shall we call it, can tune in to energetic information states, inspiration, whatever you want to call it. Within this infinite awareness, it can only access that frequency band. So basically, little me self-identity manifests itself as a little me lifestyle, because that's the only frequency range of this infinite. Think about it, you could think about it in simple terms as like Wi-Fi. You can only tune with that perception of self and reality to that level of information. Thus, you can only get a certain very narrow fix on everything and an understanding of everything. When you self-identify that is my experience and I am infinite awareness having that experience, that very change of self-identity expands your awareness. Why? Because your sense of who you are has expanded, and therefore from that must come an expanded level of awareness that's now accessing much greater amounts of this infinite field of awareness. Thus, that suddenly, instead of seeing dots and pixels and trying to work it all out, it just all looks chaotic. Once you expand your awareness, sorry, it's hot in here today. I'm getting sweaty eyes. It's really hot today. Then you're now seeing pictures, not pixels. You're seeing how the dots connect. You're seeing pictures. You're seeing that and that and that and that, and not operating in isolation. They're operating together, and therefore you see the world in a completely different way. And because the vast majority of people are on the postage stamp in phantom self mode, I am Ethel, work down the store, instead of I am infinite awareness having an experience. It means that anyone that comes from that point of view, and anyone can, it's not being like, look at me sitting on the mountain. Anyone can do it. It's just a choice. It means that the postage stamp consensus is going to see those people, ironically, as crazy and dangerous. This has happened throughout history. The authority in any point has always been terrified of mystics, of people who saw the world from a different angle. Because when you are an authority, what you need to control most effectively is uniformity. You look at any tyranny, what they're after is uniformity. Look at the European Union. They want they want uniformity on the size of bananas.
Compliance. Everybody complies. Yeah.
This is how it works. And once you start expanding your awareness, uniformity is out the window. Because what this infinite awareness is, put another way, is all possibility. And what happens when you get pulled into that little me perception of self is suddenly there seems to be very little possibility, because everything seems limited, everything seems I can't. But then when you expand out of that nonsense, suddenly you start to become aware of more and more possibilities. And by now you're not on the postage stamp, and by now you are looking in on it, and you're seeing that it's a nonsense, and its version of normal is a nonsense. So it's this move, this self-identity from little me phantom self, self-identifying with the experience, to I am awareness having that experience, that changes everything, because of the way it changes you, and therefore how you manifest and experience reality.
When you describe the phantom self, what I think I love about the whole explanation of the manipulation, the programming, and the deception is that when you describe the phantom self, you're attacking the cause of the problem. Whereas, you know, if you just tell somebody, oh, you're being programmed, you're being deceived, and you tell them some data, they go, no, I don't. They're in the phantom self mode. They don't get it. But if you explain what the phantom self is, you're explaining who they are, and then they can strip that away and then see what's left, which is the deception. I think that's maybe a simpler way of what you've put it, but I think that's a great way to, and I think that's what I love about the book so much, is you're attacking, you know, the cause of the problem.
Well, I think it's a very important point you brought up, and I saw the impact it had on Saturday in the first event in this tour. It's the explanation, step by step, of why people believe the same normal. When you explain that, well, why does this is the line, isn't it? Everyone knows that, mate. No, everyone says that, mate. They don't know it. They've been told it, and they've accepted it. But when you explain step by step, from coming out of the womb to going to the other end, how we're constantly programmed with this postage stamp normal, and how it's defended with ridicule and dismissal, anyone who wants to challenge it, the penny starts to drop. People can start to see, well, I can now see why everyone believes in this normal. And then when you follow that up by demolishing the normal with evidence that it's a nonsense, and you just see eyes open and lights going on. But again, we come back to this building alternative sources of information, because you're never going to have, I mean, I started on Saturday at 10 in the morning, and I left the building just after 10 at night.
Wow.
And that's how long it takes. All these events are like that. That's how long it takes to dismantle normal and put forward another explanation for life, the world events and everything. In the mainstream, you're never going to get a fraction of that time to do it. I mean, you know, what do they say? You know, say to me, oh, you think reptiles run the world? Yeah, okay. Well, you've got 30 seconds to explain it. Okay, well, I'll make a start, shall I? Bye. You've got no chance.
Yeah.
So we have to build our own ways of doing it. And I worked at the BBC in the 70s. In news as well as sport.
I actually remember you as a kid growing up, David,
Hey?
and I remember you in your football days, and I just want to take a moment to say that I never got what happened with you when you left the football and the other David Icke came out, and you know, you emerged as this guy with, you know, and you went on this new career, and it was the ridicule that I remember as a kid. I was like, why are they giving this guy a hard time? Even as a kid, I seen that and I didn't like it. Yeah, I didn't think it was necessary.
It was massive, but I mean, you know, when you're really coming from a completely another point of reality, and at the time of that Wogan show, I was in a transition period because my head had just been blown off. I've described it before, like you know, the bubble burst, and it burst very quickly. And what I mean by the bubble, I mean that which was my, if you like, phantom self reality. And information and concepts started pouring into my conscious mind, and it was just like I can't explain it any better. It was like pressing too many keys on a computer. Basically, the information processing went, sorry, I'm freezing. I can't process all this. And for about 3 months, and the Wogan show was in the middle of it, I didn't know what planet was on. I didn't know what was going on. I just know my life was changed and all this was happening. Then after about 3 months, it was like the computer unfroze. And people were saying, well, you're like the old David again. What's going on? But I wasn't. I may have seemed like it, my behavior, but I wasn't. I saw the world in a completely different way. And at that time at the BBC, in the kind of late 70s, I saw the end of substance. Because when I first got to the BBC, and especially a little bit before, there was still substance. There were still substantial interviews going on. There were still things done in depth. And it came from America, which is a programming laboratory. If it works there, they export it to the rest of the world.
Gotcha.
And people perceive that as the American culture being everywhere. It's not the American culture. It's that is shown to work in America in desire, in the ends of programming and perception programming that's then brought here. Same with food and other things. But I saw it. I saw how, doing my job as a news reporter, it became more and more difficult to get substance on air because everything had to be shorter. And so the mainstream media, and this was done systematically, I would strongly suggest, not by the people that were carrying it out, but in the shadows that were dictating the structure and how it worked. And what it did was exclude any substantial discussion and demolition of the way this mainstream system works, because there was simply no longer the time to discuss it, and that's when they shut it out. And so people like me, people like you, people who are coming from another angle, you can't get it through in the mainstream media, so we have to build our own networks. And that's what's been fantastic about the last 25 years is I've seen it start, and I've seen it expand. I've seen it absolutely massively expand after 9/11, particularly in America, and now we are, in terms of people and where they get their information from. The alternative media and the internet now is making these mainstream operations, television and newspapers in particular, really start to struggle to compete.
Just bizarre you mentioned 9/11 there. My other business partner, Chris from Modern Knowledge, he works with Ken O'Keefe actually on that. His daughter was in school. Couldn't believe it. His daughter was in school and was given a test paper on 9/11 and basically told to fill it in and grade it on it. I couldn't believe that they're doing this to the kids. Like, I honestly couldn't believe it.
The perception manipulation in schools is extraordinary. I mean, we've got a school around the corner from me here, where my grandkids used to go to, and my children went to. When my kids went to school, I used to say to them, just because the teacher says it, you don't have to believe it's true. If you don't feel right to you, forget it, and question it. But teachers are leaving. I can only speak from this school because it's around the corner. Teachers have been leaving this school in droves over the recent years, because teachers too cannot stand the system that's being forced upon them because of the way they're being forced to teach. And I was talking about this on Saturday about the programming of children, and someone said, and the teachers, and I said, absolutely right, they're in jail as well. So when you break down school, all it is the system's version of everything. Funny enough, one of the things, the thing that really started me on this journey and getting into this whole panorama of conspiracy was I had these massive, what you might call spiritual experiences, energetic experiences. The bubble burst, my mind opened, and very quickly, after a series of so-called paranormal experiences, not paranormal at all. And I started understanding some of these. I understand a lot more now, but some of these concepts of the nature of reality. And I started seeing more and more of the evidence that was available for it. And my question was at the start, why isn't this taught in schools? Why aren't there television programs about this? I mean, it's fundamental. It affects every man, woman, and child on the planet, the nature of reality and how it works and who we are and how we are interacting with reality, how thought creates reality, etc. And then when I started asking that question, why isn't it in the media? It's amazing information. Then
My name's Maria Wheatley and I'm second generation dowser, author and researcher, and recently I founded esotericcollege.com, which is fully affiliated to the Association of British Correspondence Colleges. We're offering courses in dowsing, past life regression, tarot and Druidic soul star astrology, and you can study these at beginners level, intermediate, or take them to advanced level to be a professional. You can study these with online courses mixed with Skype lessons, or take a full Skype course. You could even take extra Skype tuition because I'm your personal tutor. You can find out more about me at mariawheatley.com, or you can find out more about the college at esotericcollege.com.
you realize it's being systematically blocked, and then the panorama opens up of the whole conspiracy.
Another point to that, I always say to people, where people never thought about the ego. I mean, we're fed to evolve the ego. You're given courage and patriotism and flags and countries and identities, and like you say, David, I never got a choice being Irish. I was given an Irish passport. I was born in this island. I didn't get a choice. I don't like the Irish government. Never did. But I was born here. I'm patriotic to the earth. I'm not patriotic to any nation, and I don't like flags. And I grew up in Northern Ireland, where I'm at now, and I left and stuff. And so I seen a different world here anyway, and I never liked it politically. And but I see why it is that way. And I grew up because I seen people, they incite patriotism and they incite your nationality, and it's used as tools against you, and it's attack on the ego. They want that ego to evolve, and it's a sad state. It really is. But why? So I always question the same thing. Why have you never thought about it? The ego is so important. I think you should subjugate the ego. You'll probably never get rid of it, but you should at least try to subjugate it and reduce it to a manageable level.
Well, in many ways, what people call the ego is an expression of phantom self. If you get stuck in that level of self-identity, then that's a massive expression of phantom self. But what you're bringing into here now is the way you have the consensus normal, but then they break up the consensus normal into other perception guises, which can be played off against each other. So you have the Roman Catholic perception phantom self. You have the Protestant phantom self. You have the Muslim phantom self. You have the I've got a big income phantom self compared with the I'm homeless phantom self. And you've got it's very religion is very symbolic in the sense that you get a religion, and then the religion breaks up into factions, calls itself different names. Well, this phantom self operates in the same way wherever, what you call the ego here, but it's subdivided into other sub perceptions of the overall sense of normal, and thus you've got divide and rule till the cows come home and go out again, and one of the ways of keeping us out of infinite awareness is to play us off against each other. So our focus of attention, this is so important, the focus of attention is in the world of the scene, because you're being pulled in there by conflict, by fear, by all these divide and rule devices. I mean, I kind of cringe when I see Clinton and Trump in America were funded by the same people. Whoever gets into power, the same things are planned to happen. And yet the supporters are fighting each other. This is what I mean. Because they believe it's real when it's not.
To add to that, David, so the two-party dictatorship, the red team and the blue team, or the Democrats and Republicans, the Tories and the Labour Party, it's mind-numbing that it still works, David. I'm like going to people, well, if you only have two choices, and both choices, like you say, are either funded by the same people or the same people are behind those, I mean, they all answer to the same people. I mean, especially in Britain, they all answer to the Queen anyway. So, how is this stuff still effective?
Well, the thing is, they've got to try a little bit harder now, particularly in America, because people had certainly reached a point, and they have in other areas of the world, where they can see that the name changes, the rhetoric changes, but the policies don't change. I mean, I go through and you can do it ever so quickly in the talks, the sequence between 2001, just before the Bush administration came in, and all these countries that have been invaded. The list of countries that they wanted to invade were in place, provable fact, before Bush came in. The people that made the list came in with him, and they started picking off these countries after they had provided the excuse of 9/11 and the war on terror. But then Bush went out of office after 8 years, and Obama came in. Now, Obama, especially in his first election campaign, no one could have been presented as being different more than him. Change was in every sentence. But after he came in, change, everything's different now. They've gone on picking the same countries. They've just continued with the list. It's the same list. Syria, Libya, they're all on the list. So they've had to try harder. So they as people see that nothing changes, and so they've gone for the first black president. Well, that focuses more interest. Or the first black president. This year now they're going for the first woman president, and this renegade out of the system, out of the establishment. Yeah, right. Okay, Donald Trump, and they create this circus. You know, it's very appropriate that Muhammad Ali is in people's minds this week. I'm old to have seen him, come to public prominence.
He was a legend, real legend.
And what he did brilliantly was play the media and play the public to build up fights, and he became hilarious at it. All these great one-liners and everything that he did. No boxer had ever done that. No sportsman had ever done that before. He was basically creating interest to sell the fight. What they're doing here is another version of that, nothing like as good. They're selling interest in the conflict, and this man Trump, who's so different, and Clinton, and the first woman. And it's just a stage show, because whoever comes in, as we mentioned earlier, the same things will unfold unless the public intervene. The idea that we're going to change anything through politics. I mean, I'll give you a wonderful example in this country. We had Jeremy Corbyn voted into office as the leader of the Labour Party against the will of the Labour Blair-controlled still establishment. And he got a massive vote from the rank and file members of the Labour Party. He came in, and I'm sure there is genuineness in him that he wanted to do something different. He tried to do it up to the point where he lost the vote with that outrageous Hillary Benn speech on sending the RAF to Syria, to bomb Syria. And it was really kind of as Orwellian as you like that night in the House of Commons, because you had Hillary Benn described as a moderate who argued on bombing Syria, and people who argued against bombing Syria were extremists. I mean, look at the Orwellian language here. From that moment, Jeremy Corbyn has allowed himself to be completely dictated to and absorbed by the postage stamp consensus of politics. He clearly does not want to stay in the European Union. It's been his stance throughout his political career, along with his friend, ironically, Tony Benn. And his brother, Piers Corbyn, is a weather expert, has his own weather operation, and he is a vehement exposer and challenger of the climate change hoax. And Jeremy Corbyn clearly knows that, but he's going with the climate change because he's got to keep the Greens happy and the Green part of his party happy, and the Blair right-wing establishment happy, because they bought that climate change consensus, or fake consensus. And he's going even more outrageously, given his history. He's going with this stay in the EU. And of course, he's doing it as little as possible. He's trying to keep out of it, really. I think he must be deeply embarrassed. And here we have a situation where the Cameron wing of the Conservative Party and George Osborne, the Labour Party, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats, the unions are all together pushing us to stay in the European Union. And they're talking about changing it from within. Well, it's never happened before. And the point about the European Union is where we are is not where it's meant to end. Where we are is where we are. It's about to get much more extreme.
United States of Europe.
Centralized control, what have you. And so you have a Labour Party and unions, etc., and Greens, who claim to want to change society for the betterment of the less fortunate and the less outside the 1%, while arguing and campaigning to stay in a European Union that is dedicated to doing the opposite. In Scotland, this is the Orwellian inversion. We have the SNP in Scotland campaigning for an independent Scotland within the European Union. If ever there's a contradiction in terms ever spoken, that's it. There are no independent nations in the European Union. That's why the European Union is there. And so what we're saying is, let's stay, and they, of course, SNP, they're campaigning to stay in. It's amazing the Brexit polls are so high, given everything that's been thrown at people. But it's classic. It's the classic postage stamp consensus of politics. They're all standing on that stamp, and in this case, it says EU on it. And yet, the EU should be an anathema to all those so-called radical parties that want to stand up for a more just and fair and a more free world. So let's support an organisation that's deleting all of that by the hour. It's crazy.
You know, I actually had a little bit of a conversation. I won't say argument, it was a discussion, but my producer Jerry was saying that, you know, voting people to leave the EU, it's not a good thing. It's going to be the United States of Europe. And I said, you know what? Yeah, but I get that, but I don't want to ever vote my entire life. I refuse to vote because the game's rigged, and I don't want to ever vote my entire life. I'm not a sociopath. I'm not removed from society, you know, but I see the game rigged, and I'm not going to
There has to be a point in doing something, or there's no point in doing it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't see the point in it. I don't see the point in voting at all. I think, well, I don't know. The big question is, where are we going, David? Are we going to be at a point of all-out anarchy, physical anarchy against a controlled government in the future? Is that where we're going to go?
Well, I mean, you know, in the events, I've got an image that I repeat in different ways through one particularly long section, which is basically the society that this conspiracy has been heading towards since it began a long time ago. And I call it the Hunger Games Society. It's a structure, if you can see it, as a pyramid, with not just 1% at the top, less than 1% at the top. At the bottom of the pyramid, the fat bit, is the mass of the people, including those people who still at the moment think they're doing all right and this is not their problem. And holding that status quo of the masses, and I mean what we call the middle class now in that as well. If you're not part of the 1% or less than 1%, they want your wealth and security as well. And in between the two, to hold that status quo is a merciless police state tyranny. And as I go through the talk and I'm putting that up and I'm explaining things like wars and terrorism and Big Brother, and I keep relating them back to this structure, it's extraordinarily powerful when people see that all these apparently random happenings that have no connection whatsoever on the surface are actually all connected to making that structure happen. And so financially, the big breakthrough from this point of view was the bail-in, when the bail-in after Cyprus replaced the bail-out, because now the policy in the European Union and the IMF and places, people like that, is to go direct to the bank accounts of the people in the banks that fail.
Yeah.
And if you remember, in Cyprus, there were a large number of people, particularly Russian, who had a lot of money in those banks, in accounts, who would have been saying, as I said earlier, well, you know, all this stuff, you know, not my problem, I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
But they weren't very soon afterwards. So there are many ways that they wish to create that structure and are doing by the day. And you know, one of the areas I think very strongly that people need to focus on, particularly parents, but all of us, is the abuse of children by the system. From the abuse of forcing them after a desperately short period since they left the womb into this prison programming system called school. We're now having in this country parents fined for if their kids don't go to school for a day.
Wow.
Well, yes. Actually, I'm on the Isle of Wight now, and someone on the Isle of Wight challenged that in the High Court in London and won against the Isle of Wight Council. But what the government are going to do now, because there was a loophole which the judges saw, what the government will do, that you watch, they're going to come back with legislation to close that loophole so it goes back to the status quo. Let me play this against you in relation to this, because all this is connected. The way parents are losing more and more power over the decision making of their children, the way schools are getting more and more power over parents, this is all connected to the longer term goal of this, which I've been writing about for a time, about the end of parenthood itself. Because when Aldous Huxley was writing in Brave New World about babies being born not through procreation but by laboratory means, you've got to see, this is, you know, when you've got to connect the dots to see the real picture. You look at the stories coming out now, where permissions are being used to pursue the creation of synthetic children, synthetic babies, synthetic life. It's all connected to this. And as they're pursuing that in terms of science, so they're at the same time breaking down parental influence on the children. But let me play this against you if you're not coming across it. In Scotland. In August, this SNP, this Party of the People, is introducing a compulsory named person that will be designated by the state. Trials are already going on with this, but this will be en masse.
Wow.
A named person, that's the law. The state will appoint a named person to oversee the bringing up of every single child until aged 18, in some cases a bit longer. They will be assessing how the parents bring them up. The kids will be able to talk and discuss with them without the parents even knowing what's being discussed. This is and
Wow.
already in the trials, ludicrous things are being done that are having social services move in for things that are nothing to do with them, but the named person has got them involved. Named persons in the trials are going to doctors and demanding they give them private information about the family because they're a named person. What are the fillings like? What's this? What's that? And all that. And this is the front of the wedge. This is what they want everywhere. If anyone's interested in this, and everyone should be interested in it, just put into a search engine named person Scotland, and see the scale of what's going on. And most people don't know it's happening outside of Scotland anyway. It was introduced by somebody in a Question Time program recently on the BBC, and David Dimbleby, obviously the presenter, was visibly taken aback when he heard that this was being introduced. But this is what's happening, and they want it everywhere. You see, they have to get to the children, because the children are the adults when this thing is designed to be fully fledged control of the adult world. So the children are being prepared now, and one of the things that they're creating is what I term Generation Jelly. Now, there's some fantastic young people who, despite everything, are seeing it. So many young people at the event on Saturday. But there are others who are basically having their backbones removed. This is the university, both sides of the Atlantic, and colleges who are, they want a safe space, which means no one can say anything worth hearing. They want to deplatform, all these Orwellian terms, deplatform speakers that come to universities and might say some things that are provocative, and therefore, in their terms, deny them a safe space, because you can't say anything provocative. In other words, you can't say anything worth flipping hearing. And there was this story I saw about 3 weeks ago, where there was an American college. These students were saying, quote, they were literally traumatized because someone had written Trump 2016 in chalk on the pavement of their college. And in the 60s, when I was a kid, students, not least in America in the Vietnam War, they went on mass marches demanding freedom of speech. Now they're protesting against freedom of speech. They don't want it anymore. And this Generation Jelly is the next stage of the programming, the next stage of the perception download, to make them look to the state to protect them over everything, which is what this system wants. And so protecting the children from all these attacks on their freedom and on the parental rights to make decisions in their early years about them, to even go on holiday when they choose, my goodness, is absolutely vital. This is the front line in so many ways, protecting the kids from all this. Because I say to parents, if you look at your children now, who will be parents in, say, 10, 15 years' time, they won't be parents in the way that you now perceive what a parent is, unless we engage this and stop it. And the fact that not every parent is on the streets in Scotland over this is frankly shocking. A testament to how compliant people have been. But of course there is big opposition to it as well.
David, we're out of time. We're at the top of the hour. That was probably one of the fastest hours I've had. The Phantom Self, David, where can people get a copy of the book and find out more about your upcoming tour?
Well, same place, davidicke.com. They can get the book there. We'll have it to them in 24 hours, and all the tour details are there. And I can't wait, because when you're in a theater or bigger with people with open minds and overwhelmingly open hearts, going back to how we started, that is a frequency. And it's a very high frequency. And to spend the days, including the audience, in that energetic field is just amazing. Wow.
Well, David, I really wish you every success with the upcoming tour. It's an awesome book. I really enjoyed it. And as I say, I reiterated my position on my Wake and Aware world. And I really found it very beneficial. And it's coming from an awake soul as well. davidicke.com. And I'll see you in Italy, all being well, David.
Brilliant.
You take care, brother.
We'll have a paddle.
For sure.
See you. Bye.